Today's episode has been brought to you by Schedulicity.
And also by the Sukhasana chair, which I am happily sitting in right now. I have been talking about this chair because I love it. It's helping me a lot as I sit at my desk. It's like the floor has now come up to meet me. You know how we like to sit when we're used to doing yoga, sit in various positions, sit in different ways, not always sit in a standard chair. Well, this is why this chair was designed, and this is why I'm telling you about it. There's a Canadian yoga teacher named Carl, huge shout out of thanks to Carl, who created and designed this chair. And if you're looking for a new office chair, this is the one to definitely check out. Tell Carl that you heard about it here on the Connected Yoga Teacher podcast. All of you know already, if you're regular listeners, that I only talk about things that I know, like, and trust, and I'm using myself. The other thing I like to do is get a discount code for you. So the discount code is TCYT10. So that's like the Connected Yoga Teacher, all of the initials there, TCYT10, and you'll get 10% off. Visit sukhasana.com and use our promo code TCYT10. Let's get right into today's episode. Hello and welcome. If you're a brand new listener, my name is Shannon Crow. I'm a mom of 3 and I've been a yoga teacher for over 15 years. In this time, I've been raising my 3 kids. I've learned so much as an entrepreneur. And at one point, I really learned the hard way. I learned by being burnt out, by teaching too many yoga classes, putting too many things on my plate, not having a specialty or a niche. And I really had to get to that point, I guess, to figure it out. And I would rather if you skip that and not have to experience the burnout that comes along with doing it that way. Also, yoga teachers started to notice when I specialized, and they started to ask me how they could do the same. So it wasn't my intention to build this business where I work one-on-one with yoga teachers. It just happened. In that time, over the years working with those yoga teachers and studios, I really wanted to figure out how to get more information out there to yoga teachers. Information that's really rooted in the teachings of yoga. And that's why this podcast was born. Each and every week, it's here for you so that you can stay connected to the information and the inspiration that will keep you going as you build your own unique yoga business. Many of you have asked, how can I learn more about teaching corporate yoga? How can I get in front of different businesses, especially now as a lot of businesses have moved online? We know the benefits of yoga. We know how great it is to bring this into the workplace, to allow people to move and release their stress and get back to being focused on their work. This is why I'm so excited that you get to meet Samantha Harrison, because Samantha Harrison does that. She teaches corporate yoga. That's her specialty. But she also teaches yoga teachers how to do this. Another exciting thing is that this is part 1 of talking with Samantha Harrison. This was recorded before COVID was even a thing, before the pandemic hit. And I kind of put this episode on the back burner because honestly, I thought teaching corporate yoga wasn't happening as much. I don't know why I thought that. But Samantha reached out to me and said, yes, indeed, it's actually become even more of a thing now that the barriers have broken down with travel and a lot more people are working from home. And you'll hear more about that in next week's episode in part 2. So I wanted to break this up so we could get into the basics of teaching corporate yoga today. And then next week, next Monday, you're going to hear more tips from Samantha, as well as how this has really opened things up now for our corporate yoga teachers. So I just think that even if you're not interested in teaching corporate yoga, I think it might open some more doors or give you some more ideas into your own yoga business. So teaching corporate yoga is different, and we get into those differences right off the top in today's episode. We also talk about what to charge, how to get those corporate clients, all of the nitty-gritty important things that you need to know about. Now, as usual, if you're listening on the go, I take the notes for you. Crunch compiles them all so that there are clickable timestamps and links there. And today's links are really special because there's some really cool things in the links. So make sure you go over to theconnectedyogateacher.com/215 to grab all of these amazing things that Samantha has shared. The very first thing in those links that I want to tell you about is that Samantha actually has a course that opens today if you're listening in real time on how to teach corporate yoga. And she's giving all of our listeners $50 off on top of the early bird price. So I'm going to put the link there, and with the coupon code Shannon, it's all caps. All of this information will be in the show notes for you. But make sure to use the coupon code. And also the coupon code works if you want to do this as a payment plan. And then there are some freebies as well. There's a mini training ready for you right away if you want to check that out. And you can also find out more on Samantha's website at teachcorporateyoga.com. And if you want to dive right into the mini training, teachcorporateyoga.com/mini training is free and available for everyone. And there are some dates to note. So this course opens today, and it's done both online and also live at the same time. So the early bird goes until April the 18th. And then there's a regular price that's available from April the 19th until the 25th. And then the course closes. I'm hoping Samantha has a wait list for you so that you can sign up and get on that wait list if you're listening to this after April 25th, 2021. But always feel free to reach out to Samantha and ask her about that. I also want to give a couple of shout outs, first of all, to our sponsor, Schedulicity, and then to Patricia, who left a comment on our website. Let's first hear the hot tip of the week from the team over at Schedulicity.
Hello, Connected Yoga teachers. This is Jamie with the Schedulicity Hot Tip of the Week. Sometimes people assume that a career in yoga means only being a yoga teacher. And while you may spend a lot of time teaching group classes, there are so many different ways to market your skills. You might offer one-on-one training or online consulting sessions, as well as various workshops or retreats. When you use Schedulicity, you manage your group classes and one-on-one services in one place, opening up your schedule to the many possibilities in your yoga career.
Thank you so much, Team Schedulicity. I am so excited that you now have the Instagram button back because it went away for a little bit. So if you are using Schedulicity, you can have a book now button on your Instagram that will lead people directly on how to book with you. A shout out of thank you also to Patricia, who left a comment back at the end of 2020 saying, "Hello, Shannon. I really enjoyed today's episode 200, as I do enjoy all of them. I usually listen to your podcast whilst walking the dog, but today I had the pleasure of listening from my lounge. Not only does the podcast stop me from feeling alone and isolated amongst this COVID era we are now in, but I get tons of useful information. I too was like Lizzie," and just to confirm, Connected Yoga teachers, Patricia's talking about Lizzie Lassiter. And this episode that we did was with Judith Hansen Lassiter and her daughter Lizzie. That's episode 200 if you want to go back and listen. So Patricia goes on to say, "I too was like Lizzie and thought, okay, I'm doing my teacher training, but I do not want to teach, as that is what I do for a living. But here I am doing the total opposite, and I love it. I never thought at my age, 58, I would be setting up my own business. Wow, it's hard trying to get it started. I love Judith's comments on giving cues as well. I worry I talk too much in my sessions, but it gives me the chance to size up what's going on with my client's own body, so I can suggest a better way to help them get more out of their practice. In my yoga teacher training, I was told I talked too much, and I had felt guilt ever since, but not anymore. Thank you to Judith, Lizzie, and Shannon." Oh my gosh. Patricia, thank you so much for taking the time to share this comment on the website. That means so much. If any of you want to do this, you can do it at the bottom of any podcast episode, and sometimes we read those on the podcast. Patricia, I just want to say I hear this a lot from yoga teachers that you're out there feeling isolated and alone as you get your own business going, and you're not alone. I feel the same way often as an entrepreneur, as a podcaster. And that's why this podcast is here for you, and also the Facebook group. So if you're not already in the Connected Yoga Teacher Facebook group, come on over and have some conversations in there. And if you have other ideas on how we can connect and make it less lonely, I am up for those ideas. If you are loving this podcast and you have not left us a review yet, please go do that over at iTunes. We love to read those out on the podcast. You can also leave us a review on our Facebook page, but iTunes is the way that other people can find the podcast easily. That really helps us out, and we appreciate each and every review. Alrighty, let's dive in and meet Samantha Harrison. So I am so excited that you all get to meet Samantha. I've been chatting with her since I did this interview with her. I was actually so impressed with the things that she shared, and I've continued to watch all of the things that she's doing on her Instagram account. It's a lot of fun. I'll make sure that we'll link to that in the show notes. Samantha is the founder of Samantha Harrison Yoga and the creator of online corporate yoga teacher training, which is what we're really going to focus on today. She herself found yoga as a burned out, stressed out pre-med student and realized that her true calling was to help her fellow overachievers and time crunch professionals experience the benefits of yoga on and off the mat. I can't wait until you hear how she started to network and market her yoga while she was in her yoga teacher training. Now, today, Samantha is a full-time corporate and private yoga teacher in Greenville, North Carolina, and she also leads an annual 200-hour YTT and an online corporate yoga teacher training. So if you have ever been interested at all in teaching corporate yoga, this episode is for you. Let's dive in and meet Samantha. Welcome to the Connected Yoga Teacher Podcast, Samantha. It's great to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Shannon. It's so great to be here.
I'm excited that you are able to talk with us today about teaching corporate yoga. Tell me, how did you get to focus in on corporate yoga? Like, how did you choose that specialty?
Yeah, well, it was actually kind of a happy accident. I worked at Starbucks all through college, and then also after college when I was going through my initial yoga teacher training. And I've just always been a very talkative person. And so in the drive-through, as I was working at Starbucks, I would literally just be talking about yoga to like a lot of people and giving like them a neck stretch or and this happened like over months and years, like as I would see regulars. And one day I had a lady who was a regular and she came through and she just said, could you come to my office tomorrow and help me? And I was just like, sure. I wasn't even done with my yoga teacher training at the time. And I just said, sure, why not? Let me check my schedule and yeah, I'll be there. And then I went and taught her a little class, gave her some stretches to do like at her desk. And then she was like, can you come back the next day? And then the next day. And then it turned out that she was the president of that company. And I did not know that at the time.
Oh my goodness. I love it so much. I love that people are like thinking that they're picking up their Starbucks, but they're also getting a little bit of yoga as they go through the drive-through. I don't think I've ever heard an origin story like that. Oh.
Yeah, it was very crazy. And that's how I got like a lot of initial clients and relationships had developed over time through all of my Starbucks time and years. And but it was so funny. So that developed into a corporate contract that I still am teaching there today, like 5 times a week. So yeah,
wow.
It's crazy. Yeah.
So 5 times a week, how long are your classes that you teach 5 times a week?
They're 50 minutes. And so I'm there at lunchtime. And then we have an afternoon class as well. So, yeah.
That's amazing. I love that a company is so proactive in getting yoga to their people. I'm sure that person just realized, oh, this is what I needed and this is what my employees need.
Yeah, yeah. I think that that makes a huge difference when the, you know, head in the organization, the company, the president, or, someone in the administration or someone in the executive office, like, sees the value in it. That makes a huge, huge difference than if maybe they're not so much on board with seeing the benefits of yoga and bringing it into the company. So yeah, that made a huge difference.
That's amazing. I also want to highlight to our listeners that you were still in your yoga teacher training and you were networking. Like even
Yeah.
though you were just excited to talk about yoga, I'm sure you didn't
Mhm.
sit down and think, today I'm going to talk to 10 people and slowly build my business here. You
Right.
were just excited and inviting people to try yoga, and that's how it started. And that networking, that communication, you know, having interactions with people is really a big piece of our marketing that we can do. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's huge. And that's what I tell people all the time is the relationships that we're forming with people, whether or not we are thinking about them as networking, like, the person that you see at the grocery store every single time, or the bank teller that you see, like, they'll get to know you and get to know more of you. And then you never know when those little seeds that you're planting and talking to them about will come to fruition. I think it's just helpful for yoga teachers to just always have in mind, how can I be helpful to someone? Because I was always just hearing them and trying to be, helpful to them and not seeing it as salesy, but just like, here, I have something that could maybe help you. And I think if teachers keep that in mind, it can really help to not feel salesy or marketing, but it just comes across naturally. If that
Yeah,
makes sense.
that makes total sense. That's so good. So, how many classes then are you teaching per week corporate yoga right now then?
I teach about 8 personally, and then I also have some other teachers that teach for me in the companies as well in different places.
And then do you have a business then where you hire teachers, or how does that work in terms of, because it sounds like you've done so well building these classes that you had to find other people because we haven't
Yeah.
figured out how to clone ourselves yet.
Right. Yes. So basically, yes, I've hired other teachers that help me and will teach, other class opportunities when I maybe already have a committed private client or something else and I get another opportunity. Then I find the teachers and, people who usually again, it's all about relationships and have an existing relationship with and think that they'll be a good fit. And then I have a pretty long process, a little bit, of getting them on board with teaching. Like they come and observe and, see what it's like in the corporate setting. And I talk to them a lot about, how to teach in that environment and how it's different from the studio. So I do a lot to make sure that they're prepared and kind of ready to teach in that environment.
What do you
Yeah.
think is one of the biggest differences from teaching at a, quote unquote regular yoga class out in the community versus corporate?
So I think one, they need to be ready to like improvise and go with the flow. Because you never know. Like literally, I showed up to one of my regular classes on Monday, and the room that we always use was booked, and we had to figure something out. Like I was just like, okay, all right, they're using this space and it got overbooked. And now we have to figure out, are we going to be in the hallway? Is it nice enough to go outside? What are we going to do? And so you just always have to be ready to like improvise. You might not have all the props that you love to use in the studio. So that's a huge thing. Another huge thing that I've found is actually like what we wear and our dress. I have to talk to my teachers about that. Because I actually had an instance where I had a sub one time and it was in the summertime and I didn't say anything to her about what she would wear in. And the front desk like gave her a t-shirt.
Yikes.
I
Oh my
know.
goodness. Well, if you
So
think
funny.
about how sometimes we might show up to a hot yoga class, and
Exactly.
that is not really proper dress attire showing up to an office.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, and you don't think about that, really when you're going into that environment, but then when you're there and you're like around all these people that are dressed up or in suits and all of this, you almost feel naked. It's like, oh, I'm in a strappy, tank top or really loud yoga pants. Like those things are not appropriate in this environment. So that's something that I talked to people about and realized pretty quickly that I had to address. So I talk about being yoga professional.
Right. Oh,
Yeah.
this is really interesting. I work at a physio office, and so my yoga clothes look very different. I love to shop at Reitman's. I don't know if this is a store that you have in the US, but because I'm shorter, and
Hmm.
I can find dressy looking, like they'll pass as a office wear, but they're very stretchy. So I can do
Oh, yeah.
yoga in clothing that looks like I could also show up to the office. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And
That's
so
cool. I've never heard of that store. Yeah. I don't know
maybe
that
it's a
store.
Canadian thing. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
maybe.
And this is not sponsored, but I should definitely reach out to Reitman's and say, you should sponsor the podcast. So
Right. You
dress
should.
is different, being able to change things up, like adapt when you get
Hmm.
in there.
Hmm.
If you were to summarize, what is the biggest pain point that people in an office have that yoga helps them with? Do you know what
Hmm.
that is?
I would say in general, it's just that they're not moving in their day and they come in and they've been sitting for hours on end, not really taking very many breaks except maybe to get up and go to the bathroom. And they're just stiff, like super stiff. And also mentally, I think they're dealing with a ton of stress and overwhelm and busyness. And so, I see my main job as just helping to, it's kind of this balance between getting them moving and getting them active, but in a calm, slow, grounded way where they can, slow their mind down, switch gears into yoga mode, but be moving while they do.
Right.
So yeah, I would definitely say it's just the stiffness and all the effects that we've know about of sitting and being in, because that's most of the time, not always. I do have some places that I go that people are on their feet a lot, but in a lot of cases it's a lot of people at their desk. So
Right. Oh, this is really good to think of what is it like in that environment. I used to teach at a hair salon. So it was their
mm,
lunch break. I would come in and obviously they'd be on their feet all day and they'd just be glad to get down to the floor. And also their shoulders, like from holding their arms up, cutting hair all day was they needed different yoga than someone sitting at a chair all day.
right, yeah, totally, yeah. And I think it's really important to think about, what, like, that's why it's important to know like what their job is and how they're spending their time and everything, because yeah, it'd be very different for someone who, like you said, works, on their feet and is using their hands and their wrist in all kinds of different ways. Like, yeah, that's
Yeah.
important. Yeah.
So then how would you tell yoga teachers to set up these relationships with people who own a corporation? Like, would you suggest that they go out and seek different corporations that are looking for yoga? How
Hmm.
do they do that?
So, my general recommendation, and I talk about all of these things in more detail in the training that we'll talk about sometime, maybe, but is there's three ways that I think you can go about finding corporate clients. And the main way that I think is the most effective, but is also the most kind of long goal, like it takes a while for things to go into fruition, but is using your own relationships that you have with people. And, whether this is family, friends, coworkers, your yoga students that you have already, and using those relationships to kind of plant seeds with people about how you're wanting to bring yoga into the workplace and into the corporate environment, and get a feel for, maybe their company would be interested. And that way you can have somebody that can directly, maybe connect you with the right contact, the HR department or the corporate wellness committee, and if you do that, if you have someone that can actually connect you to them and make, send an email or make a phone call that also CCs you in it saying, making the introduction, then that's usually a better way, a more effective way to get in than if you just cold call.
Right.
So
Right.
that's usually, yeah. And I dive into that a lot on like how to have these conversations and how to talk with people and how to plant seeds that, again, don't come across salesy, but they come across that you're just trying to help. And our goal as a yoga teacher, especially for in this environment, is to, in a way, we're really making yoga more accessible, bringing yoga to people who wouldn't normally show up to a studio. And so if you just always have that in mind when having these conversations that may feel scary or vulnerable with other people about telling them what you're trying to do, then it actually, it will help calm that feeling of the scary, vulnerable feeling. Does that make sense?
It does. That's really good. And so then it sounds like corporations hire you, they pay for it. It's not like people are paying for the yoga when they're at work. Am I correct in that?
So there's actually three different ways that people can pay in a company. So one would be the full subsidy, and that is, yes, where the company pays for it in full. But I have some companies that also do what's called a partial subsidy, where they just ask the employees pay like $5 or $10 for a portion for the class they're going to attend, and then the company pays the remainder. And I dive more into like the pros and cons of these different ones, but basically I think that actually you get the best attendance at places where it has a partial subsidy because people have a little more buy-in. But then also I have a place that I go to that's just like a host. And so they will let the company or they'll let the employees use the space, but the employees split the cost, which there's a lot of different ways as to how you would go about structuring that, and that gets a little more complicated. But it is a potential, and I have even done that for a place who maybe were on full subsidy and then they got a budget cut. We switched to like a hosting situation, if that makes sense.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's great. So it could be 100% they use the space, they pay, or the company pays partial, or the company pays the full in. I love how you highlighted when people invest, they show up. I mean, this is
Yeah.
just human behavior.
Right. Exactly. It is.
This is why registered sessions work so well when we're planning something out. So then how do you price this? Because I'm guessing that it's very different from, like, do you have an hourly rate that you have and you suggest for your teachers that work with you? How does that work?
Yeah. So, and I have a form or a PDF that everyone can go and get that talks about how to price everything, because it depends on, is it going to be an hour class, is it going to be a weekly class, is it going to be a monthly class, is it going to be a one-time class, is it going to be 30 minutes, there's a lot of factors that go into that. But in general, I would say at minimum, teachers should be charging the same amount as they would as an in-home private client, at minimum. Ideally, they would charge like $20 to $50 more for a corporate class than they would for someone they go see in their home, like an individual. But if they're just starting out and they're wanting to kind of they're not very busy and they're willing to take something on for maybe a little bit less, then at least the same amount that you would for an in-home private client.
Oh, I love this. This is really a great equation because obviously we're global and we all have different prices in our area. So this is a great way. And if our listeners are wondering, how do I set what would I charge, for a private in-home? I go through that in a few episodes, but the basic thing I tell people is to look around. What are massage therapists charging? What are physios charging in your area?
Yeah.
It should be equal to that.
Right.
Connected Yoga teachers, I'm popping in here for a moment to tell you that since Samantha and I spoke, we over here at the Connected Yoga Teacher team have created an article, a huge shout out to Crunch for putting this all together, that summarizes all of the information that really digs into this question of what should I charge for online or in-person offerings. So I'll make sure to link to that in the show notes. And in that article, it's so worth going to that article actually, because you can find the actual thread in our Facebook group where everyone's talking about what they're charging. So you can take a look at that. As well, Crunch has compiled all of our podcast episodes that talk about teaching yoga online, pricing, and growing your yoga business. So if you're thinking, okay, I need to know what to charge, or I need some help teaching online, or I need to really grow my yoga business, these are some episodes to support you. The link for this episode will be in our show notes, but if you're listening to this and then you forget which episode it is, not to worry. If you go to theconnectedyogateacher.com, look for articles and you'll find it right there, what to charge. And also you can always search our website. There's a great search engine and you can just write in what to charge, online yoga or pricing or something along that line, and it will come up with all of the podcasts and articles that we have for you. Alrighty, let's get back into this episode with Samantha.
And I think in general, like the price would be anywhere between $60 to, $100 or $150 even, depending on the area. I mean, that is a very big, range that you have there. But yeah, I mean, I think the best way, like you said, is looking at other service providers and seeing what they would charge and asking what they would charge, especially to go into the home. And that's why it's important to price, because you will be driving there. You will be, there's more things to consider than if someone was just coming to you at, say, the studio.
Right. Oh, this is super important then. So it's not just if people are coming to us at a studio or coming to our home studio or we're meeting at a space in town. This is super important because there's a lot of like drive to the place, find out where you're going, unpack the stuff. If I had to do a one-off, it would be a lot higher than a regular thing.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I dive into in this free PDF that they can get is, how to decide for a one-off, like take that base rate, whatever that is, and then, add $50 to $75 to it for a one-off kind of situation. But yeah, that's just kind of a general rule of thumb that I think people can use, though, is at least charge the same amount that you would to go to somebody's home and do a private.
Oh, that's great. I will make sure that we have the link to that in our show notes.
Cool.
It's corporateyogatraining.com is the website, and I'll make sure that we link to the PDF in there. That's great.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I hope it's really helpful for people, and y'all can email me with more questions, but it dives in a little bit more to all those nuances of the different pricing for the different types of options and stuff too.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you would want yoga teachers to know about signing up to teach corporate yoga, or something that you think really helps them to make this work?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that it's just, there's so much need for it. And that I think we've all seen the yoga studio market get really saturated. It's not a ton in my area, luckily, but it is becoming more and more. I'm in more of a small town, but it is growing to be more saturated. And I think as teachers, especially if you're trying to do this more full time and make more income and make this more of what you do, then expanding into the corporate yoga market is a really great opportunity. And I think there's really not a ton of it happening right now. And it's a really good time. But you do have to, I think you have to get a different mindset than you do when you're just showing up as a teacher for a studio class. And so it does take a little more of a yoga entrepreneur mindset, if you will, because you have to address all the businessy stuff. But if you're willing to take on that role and do that, it's such great work and it's so fulfilling. And just to see people who, you wouldn't normally come to a class, wouldn't normally associate themselves with yoga, to love and grow the practice and get so many benefits. It feels so good. It's such good work, and it can be challenging and also very worthwhile and very sustainable as a yoga teaching career as well.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that. That makes me excited that some of our yoga teachers will niche down into this specialty.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great niche. Yes, as you would call it.
I want to ask you about the online training that you're putting together. So I know that you have been focused on this for a while. You're putting this online training together, and it's for yoga teachers, correct?
Right. Yes. Yes. Just for yoga teachers.
And just for yoga teachers who want to teach corporate yoga. Do you want to tell me a
Right.
little bit about the training then?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yes, this online corporate yoga teacher training is really for yoga teachers who maybe have been teaching for a little while in the studio environment, and they're now wanting to expand their offerings, or they're wanting something that's maybe more sustainable, because we all know that classes can get cut quickly at a studio, and maybe take things into their own hands a little bit more and become more independent. So this training divides out into 3 modules. And module 1 is really going to go into all of the who, what, when, where, why of getting corporate clients. We're going to talk about our mindset and how to have this more yoga entrepreneur mindset that you need. We're going to talk about relationships and fostering connection and how to actually find the right corporate contact. And I give lots of email templates and scripts to use, and just a lot of I've literally copied and pasted emails that I've used and sent to companies to get these jobs basically, and am giving everyone that information. We talk about setting up an initial meeting, class name, like how to potentially name the class, how it might be different than just calling it yoga.
Right?
So we go into that. And then module 2 is all on logistics. So it's the pricing, it's proposals, it's contracts, it's liability forms, it's invoicing and payment schedules, getting referrals, growing your team like I've done, websites, marketing, just all of that nitty gritty businessy stuff. And then module 3 is all about actually teaching, what it's like to teach in that environment and how to be a yoga professional, as we've kind of already talked about, and dealing with the prop dilemma and creating a yoga bubble within this more chaotic environment of, the corporate setting, and dealing with all the distractions. We'll also talk about how to teach to multiple levels of students, because you have all kinds of different people coming in, and desk culture, and how to educate people on how to help themselves, outside of yoga, but talking about their footwear and, things like that of desk culture. So we go into a lot, and I, again, give sample class plans, and I have some videos of me teaching some chair classes, and in the logistics, they get my exact proposals and contracts and liability forms and all of that. So a lot of templates, and really just a true how to do all of this.
That's amazing. I love how you have divided up into these 3 modules. They're really clear. And then they have, it sounds like a ton of information. This is super exciting.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's really a lot of information. And I didn't really realize until I went to put all this onto paper and recording, how much really goes in to doing this, growing this type of business and teaching these type of classes. But it really is a lot. And I mean, it's obviously totally doable, but this is basically the whole blueprint of how to do it and not be so overwhelmed with all the things. Yeah.
Oh, this is good. As someone who has created online courses, I completely understand what you're saying. You do not realize all that you've put into it. I've created courses or created, talked to people, answered their questions, and then they ask me a question that's 10 steps before what I even thought was the beginning. So this is good.
Exactly. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So that's what I have done as well. And then we'll also have like a Facebook group where people can go in and ask questions and all of that good stuff. So there'll be lots of interaction and diving in and answering people's individual questions as they go through. But the course will be one that they can get, of course, have forever, come back to it when they need to, and get referrals, and maybe they need to raise their prices, all of those things. And they'll also be able to dive into all the content really at once. So it won't be necessarily dripped out. It'll be just kind of, you can dive in. Yeah.
Dive in and get going. That's great.
Yep.
Thank you so much for sharing this with us today. I will make sure that we link to that in our show notes. But thank you so much for your time. You've answered a lot of questions. This has been fantastic.
Absolutely. I was happy to do it. Thank you so much.
That is it for this week, Connected Yoga Teachers, but we actually get to learn more from Samantha next week. Thank you so much, Samantha. This has been so amazing. I had some key takeaways here. One being the main differences of teaching corporate yoga and really around like the clothing that we wear. I'm so glad that you brought this in and how we can show up like a yoga professional. And it changes the conversation a little bit around yoga clothing. I myself do not feel very comfortable in traditional quote unquote yoga clothing. I had a really hard time with this actually when I went and filmed with Yoga Anytime. Poor Kira had to lead me through why it just shows up on video better when you have tight fitting yoga clothing. But in my day-to-day, I really have always liked to show up to my group classes, my private sessions in just clothing that looks like I could go to the office, but I can also move like I'm in a yoga class. I would love to know from all of you, and maybe share this in the Connected Yoga Teacher Facebook group or tag me on Instagram if you have some yoga clothing that you just love to wear that would also work as I could wear this anywhere. I really like to be able to go from my yoga practice in the morning to my desk, do some podcasting stuff, do some work that I do, and then also be able to go out into my garden at the end of the day. So that's the type of clothing I need. It can go anywhere. Also, I liked that Samantha highlighted what our office workers need, what the pain points are. If any of you are working with or targeting or kind of talking to someone who works at a desk, which is a lot of people nowadays, think about adding this into the marketing that you do. You might do an Instagram reel or an email or share a photo of a certain pose that you love to do when you take a break from your desk. I did a reel on Instagram. I am not into like dancing around and pointing at things and playing music in reels, but someone had asked me what is the pose that I really like to go to after I've been sitting a lot and if my hips feel tight. And so I shared one on there, and I am just amazed at the reach that reels are getting. So I would say try reels if you're on Instagram. Don't worry, you don't have to dance around and add music if you don't want to. My good friend Amanda McKinney told me that. Thank you, Amanda. But when you go to share the thing that you're sharing, think about the pain points that your audience has. You know, are they sitting for a long time? Are they feeling stiff? Are they stressed out? Are they overwhelmed? Are they busy? Are they parents? You know, who are your people? And how can you share something with them that really just enriches their life? If you do create a reel, tag me in it. I would love to share it, or send it to me and I will share it out. When we get into these pain points and we're helping yoga students over social media, it makes me really excited. Also, don't forget the power is really there in your emails. So how could you share the same message with people who are sitting at their desk and clicking open on your email? You know, could you do some type of a video share in there or some type of an image? I'm so curious what people are doing in email as well to get people moving and feeling better. As we get ready to wrap up here, I want to remind you, if you're signing up for the corporate yoga teacher training with Samantha, if you want to learn how to teach corporate yoga, Make sure to use the coupon code Shannon. All of the information for that is in the show notes. So that's at theconnectedyogateacher.com/215. And if you want to hang out together, let's do that. There is a workshop April the 30th. Eva Lotta Lamb, who was here on the podcast, is going to teach us how to draw those yoga stick figures in a way that makes it like we're learning how to write out the alphabet. I'm so excited about this, so that any spot, any place where you would like to jot something down in yoga, you can do it quickly. It won't take a whole bunch of words. And if you're like me, like really unclear stick figures doing poses, my ability to draw even stick figures is kind of sad. But I'm excited that we get to go and learn together at this workshop. We're going to hang out live on Zoom. And yes, there's a replay. That's happening April the 30th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. So that's the same time as Toronto, Ontario, or New York, New York. It's $57 US. And I'm so excited that a bunch of us connected yoga teachers just get to hang out on a Friday and draw some. You can bring your own favorite snacks, your own favorite beverage. We can chat in the chat and hang out. It'll be a lot of fun. I want to give a huge shout out of thank you to everyone here on the team for making today's episode possible. And also, we're adding to our team soon. So you will be soon seeing a new person show up. Maybe that'll be already there on our team page. You can go over to theconnectedyogateacher.com if you want to see who is on our team. Alrighty, connected yoga teachers, I want to hear from you. What will you be doing this week to stay connected to yourself, your yoga practice, and to your community so that you can share the yoga that lights you up?